Chapter 1. My Heart-Struck Sorrow. Memphis. There is an impulsive and romantic streak in my nature that I find difficult to control when I go song hunting. I know that I should first put on my best suit and pay formal calls on the mayor, the local professor of music, etc., ask their advice, win their support, and then gradually slide from the front gate around to the back pasture where the songs live. However, music professors are uncomfortable with me, and I am downright unhappy in anything but sport shirt and blue jeans. So, even after being snubbed, lectured, arrested, and once or twice shot at, I still persist in plunging straight for the bottom where the songs live. And I am always surprised when the big bullfrogs of the pond start croaking and the ripples keep spreading and causing me trouble later on. When I returned to the South in 1942, after a long absence, I made the same mistake and ran straight into trouble. The weather was partly responsible. Texas born and bred, a hot day puts me into a euphoric frame of mind. That August afternoon, the thermometer registered 101 in the shade, and the hot wind roaring off the melting tarvia through the windows of my flivver had me singing all the way to Memphis. I fancied I could smell the Mississippi, which for me is Southern America in a liquid form, signifying fried catfish, roasting ears dipped in butter, and watermelon in the cool of the evening, washed down with corn liquor and accompanied by the blues. I knew this was to be my last song collecting jaunt before the army got me. Maybe the last time I would ever hear the alley blues and the hallelujah spirituals that I believe are the best art our country has produced. Memphis and Beale Street, the home of the blues, lay just ahead, and I had a terrible thirst. I didn't stop to reflect that Memphis and the South might have changed since my last visit, especially under the tensions of the war. After years of living in the North, my speech and my manners were no longer straight Southern, and I was unaware that my protective camouflage had faded somewhat. Memphis was the front gate to home for me, and I walked as if I owned the place. I drove straight to Beale Street and strode into the Monarch Saloon where Handy and Jelly Roll had played, slipped a quarter in the jukebox, put my foot on the brass rail, and called for a beer. But the bartender did not sail into action with a schooner and a spigot and a dish of free lunch as he had done on my last visit. As the jukebox cleared its throat with a frozen smile and began to boom out the blues, the black barman glanced at the owner shook his head slightly, and the bartender jerked his thumb at a card tacked to the wall. It read, "This is a colored place. No whites served. Sorry." He didn't look sorry. He just grinned a little as he said, quote, "You must not be from around here, mister, or you'd know that things have changed on Beale Street. Mr. Crump say, if we gonna segregate one way, we gonna segregate the other. Yes, sir, that old gun got two wrong ends now, and you looking straight down the other one," end quote. This was justice, this was logic, but it was crazy logic and double injustice. I left my quarter to amuse the nearly empty Monarch and went away. But nowhere in Beale Street's mile of cheap stores, eating joints, and juke joints could I find a barman who agreed with me that this new regulation merely multiplied the insanity of the old barrier between whites and blacks. Beale Street had changed from a sort of blue branch of the Mississippi to a dry gulch, and as I shuffled along it aimlessly, glancing into the dance halls and bars where the fun was going on, I learned what it was like to be a black man in the wrong part of town. A very thirsty hour later, I heard two guitars in quiet conversation behind the screen door of a tailor shop. I didn't dare open the door or say a word. I just leaned against the wall to listen as a whiny, rather humorous tenor voiced my own sentiments. I walked all the way from East St. Louis here, and I got nobody, no one to feel my care. Willie B stuck his head out of the door. Willie wore a big black Stetson on his ruff of kinky hair, and his black face wore a smile. Quote, "Why don't you come in where you can hear better, mister?" End quote. "There's a law that says I can't," I said. That's right, Willie, said someone inside the shop. Them new laws. Besides, they don't sell beer in tailor shops. Yeah, said Willie B., but the man across the street sells it in bottles. I always thought that blues and beer went pretty good together. I believe in the 3 B's myself, said Willie. Beer, blues, and Willie B., which is me. I'm going down to the river, sit down and begin to cry, sang the voice inside the tailor shop. If the blues overtake me, I'll drink that old river dry. I've got $1 for the man across the street, I said. Take it, Willie B., take it and fly, said the voice behind the screen door. We'll meet you in the outside garden. Willie B. had already recorded for a commercial label, and later he asked that his full name not be used in connection with the recordings he made for me. He took the $1 and was halfway across the street when his friend appeared. The man had a guitar in his powerful brown hand. He was tall, lanky, silky muscled, with a long, oval Sudanese face. He introduced himself as William Brown. It was dark, so we shook hands. Most people have forgotten that it was dangerous back then for a black and a white person to shake hands where someone could see them. Texas-born, I had acquired the habit only recently. I likes a man from off, said Brown. Come on, let's us go out to the garden and Willie B., he hollered. Tell the man to send along 3 po' boys. I'll pay him tomorrow. The garden was a vacant lot with a huge billboard, where a girl with a very rosy face was drinking a Coca-Cola 12 feet high. Our table was a stone. Our seats were bricks piled 3 high, but the beer was stinging cold and the stars seemed to draw closer as Brown began. Now I'm broke and I'm hungry, ragged and dirty too. What I want to know, sweet mama, can I go home with you? I'm broke and I'm hungry. A powerful flashlight shot its beam in my eyes and then played over the faces of my friends. What the hell is going on over there? Said a cracker voice. The blues, I yelled. Easy, mister, Willie B. whispered. That police is pointing his gun over here. There were 2 rather decrepit Memphis policemen on the sidewalk. Where are you from? What's your name, buddy? What are you doing on Beale Street? All this with 2 flashlights in my face. As I was explaining that I was on a mission from Washington to record the blues and had found 2 good singers. Washington, just what I thought, said A. Associating with niggers, said B. Why don't you take all this nigger crap back where you came from, said A. We don't like it here in the South, said B. Where's your draft card, said A. I felt for my papers. They were all in my car at the other end of Beale Street. Just what I told you, said B. Just a white tramp with a couple of goddamn nigger vagrants. I oughta run 'em in, said A. Get moving, you damn niggers, punching my friends with his nightstick. And you nigger lover, said B, not touching me. You walk ahead and mind you walk straight. The Library of Congress cultural mission to record Delta folk songs made a rather sorry spectacle as it straggled down Beale Street, past doorways filled with brown faces, past the Monarch, toward my car. I turned once and said to Brown, I'll meet you here in a half hour. Brown nodded, and A hit him in the shoulder with his club, and he stumbled and fell in the gutter. Thought I told you to move along, said B, and laid his hand on his gun. At the car, I showed the cops who I was and demanded their numbers. That ain't no Memphis permit, said A. That's a damn Washington permit. Been too many damn folks from Washington stirring up trouble around here. And you don't need our numbers, said B. Just tell 'em up at City Hall old Mac sent you. Yeah, and don't let us catch you on Beale Street without no permit again, said A, or we'll run you in. Now get. At the Memphis City Hall, they were a good deal more suave. As a Southerner, you ought to understand, a pleasant young man explained. Our labor is being corrupted. Agitators putting wrong ideas in their heads, trucks coming over the river from Arkansas recruiting our labor at fancy prices, and trainloads of them leaving every day for jobs up north. They're getting so uppity it's dangerous for a white man to go to Beale Street after dark. Some boys down there would kill you for $5. Now, tomorrow evening I'll talk to the chief and he'll arrange for you to go around with a plainclothes escort. They can take you to some mighty hot places where folks do everything but." He laughed a little. "Hope you'll forget about old Mac," he added. "He's a little old-fashioned in his way, but he's a good man. About that permit, I reckon the mayor would give you a license to make your records if he sees things like I do, but of course I can't speak for him." I picked up Brown and Willie B around the corner from the tailor shop. "Let's lamb out of this town," said Brown. We crossed the long river bridge. Down below us, the Mississippi poured on south, talking to itself in its big, quiet voice. "What did them cops at City Hall tell you, Jack?" asked Willie B. I said nothing. "Leave the man alone, Willie," said Brown. "Can't you see his feelings are hurt?" "Let's just forget about damn Memphis laws and get out of the bottom somewheres where nobody gonna bother us. Let's just go to Ham's place and get this man something to drink." Ham's place was a shack in the middle of an enormous Arkansas cotton field. A country store in the daytime, night transformed it into a dance hall and gambling joint. The light blue walls were plastered with brilliant snuff, baking powder, and roll-your-own advertisements. But the main business of the store was selling country moonshine, as clear as spring water and as fiery as the 4th of July in West Hell. The price was reasonable, so we bought a jug and passed it round, and the crap game in the corner broke up, and the Arkansas folk gathered round quietly to hear Willie and Brown perform. Willie B had made commercial recordings. In the hard white light of the juke, you could see that, although he was in his 20s, his eyes were streaked with brown and his face had that muddy, blurred look typical of alcoholic blacks. "First song I'm gonna sing for you, mister, is a little number already out on records. It went good from what they tell me." "Did you get your royalty?" "My what?" "You heard the man," Brown said. "You're so much for every record." "Yeah, the white man give me $10 for every song put on his machine," said Willie B, turning his vague, blurred gaze in my direction. 3 records, $60. And this hat besides," flinging his Stetson down to the floor. "That's how they treat a man up in Chicago. They recognize his musicians up there, not like down here. Down here?" "We know about down here," said the bartender. "We want to see how that microphone work." "Well," said Willie B, "the circumstances of making this song is a girl I had. She fell. She went down like the moon before day, otherwise, but I loved her, that's why I say." And he began to sing in his whiskey harsh voice.
And close in the afternoon, 4 o'clock flowers bloom out in the morning, and close in the afternoon.
4 o'clock flowers bloom in the morning and close in the afternoon. Well, they are only so much beauty and they fade so soon. I'm a hard-working man and I never gets my lovin' soon. When I think about it in the morning, it aches my heart in the afternoon. I'm not jealous, but I'm superstitious. Most working men is that way. If I catch you playing hooky, lordy, what a day, what a day. She was only beauty, you understand, Willie B added tenderly, speaking half to himself. But she went down. She was my first love. But then she gone with the wind. She never did get to hear that number I made for her. Maybe on some jukebox or on the radio. They'd announce it, "This next blues by Willie B," and she heard and she knew exactly who the record was singing about. Willie smiled, but the smile did not untie the puzzled frown that knotted his brow. He waved his hand grandly toward the recording machine and ordered, "Now, show these folks what I'm talking about while I gets me another little drink." I played the record back. "That's a ghost," said a wizened little old farmer in the corner. "It purely a ghost." "Don't talk old-fashioned, man," said Willie B. It ain't nothing to do with ghosts. I tell you exactly how it works. You know what a cotton gin is? Sho, said the old fella. Well, it's the same idea. Just like a cotton gin, take 2-3 wagon loads of cotton and squeeze it down to just one bale so you can ship it where you want to go. This microphone squeezes me and my song down into that little wavery line, and they can ship me out to wheresoever they want me to sing. See the mystery? The old man took his pipe out and his mouth again spat. I still say it's a ghost, he said. Willie B. stalked off to the bar, muttering about how some people won't ever be educated, while I turned to William Brown, the man I'd had my eye on from the beginning. Give us the blues, Brown. I'm not a composer, I just know old scattering verses. The older the better, Brown. Well, I ain't got no voice, but I'll give you the words of an old Memphis song. William Brown began to sing in his sweet, true country voice, poking in delicate guitar passages at every pause, like the guitar was a second voice, commenting with feeling on the ironic words of the blues. The noise in the room died away. The little old man took the pipe out of his mouth and forgot to put it back in again, leaning forward so as not to miss a note. This was the real blues, America's cantejando, not a whit inferior to that great Spanish art in vocal and instrumental skill, and fresher in sentiment and broader in its range. The blues in print give you the skeleton only. If you've never heard the blues, get yourself a record and listen, then come back and join us at Hamp's Place.
Lord, I'm broken, I'm hungry, rigged and dirty too. Broken, hungry, rigged and I'm dirty too.
Now I'm broke and I'm hungry, ragged and dirty too. What I want to know, baby, can I stay all night with you? Well, I peeped in my window, but I couldn't see through my blinds. Heard the bed springs popping and heard my baby crying. If I can't come in, baby, I won't be back no more. When I leave this time, you can hang your crepe on your door. I say your hair ain't curly and your doggone eyes ain't blue. I say your hair ain't curly and your doggone eyes ain't blue. And if you don't understand, want me, what in the world I want with you? That's the blues. That's the Delta blues, said the old man, putting his pipe back in his mouth when Brown had finished. Boy, what you want to drink? He fumbled in the pocket of his ragged overalls, fished out an old handkerchief, untied a knot in one corner, and took out a quarter. Here, Hamp, give this boy a drink. He bound to be dry, he been singing. Brown looked pleased for the first time since we'd left Memphis, and drowned the half-water glass of fiery stuff. Makes men think, don't it? He said, putting the old man on the shoulder. I'm on a girl called Colleen, said the old man. She wasn't so big down, nor so bright, but she was supple. I mind me. Willie B came blundering from the bar. Enough of them old wore-down songs, he muttered. We gotta put this in high, give it a modern kick. Now listen, he said, turning his drunken gaze on me. You pretty nice, white man, at least I believe you are, and I'm gonna give you my latest composing for your record. But don't you put it on no radio. Do, and I'll be on you like that Memphis cop was on Brown here. Willie laughed, and the others looked embarrassed. Remember how that was? Well, this is a record of my knowledge of the Japs. The title is A Jap Girl for the Next Christmas from Santa Claus. He began in his broken voice.
Goodbye, I got to leave you. I got to fight for America, you and my boy. Goodbye, babe, I hate to leave you. I got to fight for you, America, and my boy.
Goodbye, goodbye. I got to leave. Girl, Uncle Sam done call. I got to fight for you, America and God. I got to fight for you, America and God. This is one of my recordings because I'm an American citizen. I am an American citizen, he muttered, glaring around. These Memphis cops call me vagrant, but I'm a musician. I'm a recording artist for the Victory Company, known all over the world. But these southern laws don't recognize a man by his talents. They just think, He paused and brought his face close to mine. You ain't from around here. You don't play no part in all this mess going on around here. You don't know nothing about it. And I, Willie B., better known as 61 because I ramble 61 highway from Chicago, cleaned out of New Orleans with my guitar for my buddy. And I'm going to tell you. Then Willie B., for a few minutes, conquering his drunkenness, reproduced with irony, with perfect mimicry, an encounter he had recently with a Memphis policeman, a conversation in which his story was so long and convoluted that the policeman finally walked off and left Willie B. holding the street corner stage. So old Mac came up to me one day, see? They needing labor bad on all these plantations south of here, but now us boys going north and finding out we don't have to take this old southern stuff no more. That's right, boy, said the old man. Preach. So old Mac come up to me and he say, Nigger, what you do for a living? And I said, Mr. Mac, I said, I'm not doing anything but playing music, and if I said I wouldn't, I'd lie to you. Here Willie B. fell into the wine, half fawning and half insolence, which poor whites love so much for its comedy and its falseness as they do for its surface of currying favor. Mr. Mac, I've been disabled for work ever since I ganged up on at Roadhouse playing piano. Any job that I could get that maybe I could make, I just can't carry on by not having full control of my left arm. I have a good vim when I come on in the morning, Mr. Mac. Sometimes I last for 3 hours, sometimes 4. Sometimes the left arm go down on me about 12. Now you know me, Mr. Mac, you know I used to be one of the best cotton pickers in the Delta before my arm went down. Nowadays I can pick till 11, maybe 12 if the cotton ain't too tight. I'll make till around 11, then I begin to lose speed. And you know, a man can't pick no cotton with one hand. And that's the reason, Mr. Mac, I try to take up this guitar playing of mine, trying to scramble up some way to make a living, just being a little jackleg musician. Here Willie B. began to mumble. The alcohol was taking over again. Just some sort of an old blues singer, he muttered, and his head flopped on his breast, and he began to snore. Brown looked at him sadly. The boy used to be good once, he said, but whiskey getting him, he worried too much. He's always mad. I ought to leave him alone. I'll leave that boy just to play, said the old man. We others pick the cotton. I ought to leave him to play. But I heard it was getting better down here, I said. That's what you heard, said the old man. But some folks have changed, haven't they, I said. Well, that's true, said the old man. Some few have changed, but it all reminds me of a tale my granddaddy used to tell. One time the dogs and the rabbits had a convention, and the dogs agreed that not to run the rabbits no more. So 2 rabbits were standing up by the road one day. They was talking over the business they had probably been doing. So one rabbit looked way down the road, and he seen an old lean hound dog coming. He said, "Looky yonder now, I better be going. Ain't that a dog coming yonder?" Other rabbits say, "Well now, don't you remember how the dogs voted in that convention not to run the rabbits no more? He not gonna bother us." "Yeah," he say, "but brother, that son of a bitch yapping over there in the bush is liable not to be been in that convention." And that's exactly the way I am about white men down here in the Delta. Some of them might have done changed their ways, but how am I going to tell by looking at them? Brown took a long drag at his cigarette. "That's just the way I feel, Daddy." He walked to the door and looked out at the big, fertile Delta. Her green belly turned up to the moonlight and stood there quietly, rubbing his shoulder where old Mac had struck him down. "I'm going to miss all this when I'm gone. I was raised around here, and I know I'm going to miss it." "Where you going?" asked Hamp. "Somewhere I'll be treated like a man," said Brown. "Taking Willie B?" I said. "Nah," said Brown, looking down with compassion at Willie B. snoring over his guitar. "That poor boy never going nowhere. I'm leaving before I get to be like him. Little Robert." It was already dawn when I dropped Brown and Willie B. off in Memphis and found a bed somewhere. The blazing noon sun woke and revitalized me as I drove south. Willie B.'s Highway 61 ran straight through mile after mile of flat, treeless Delta plantations where the houses of black sharecroppers rose like gray stones in the green sea of cotton. The Beale Street episode had been fortunate, not so much for the songs I had recorded as for what I had learned about the singers. The Memphis police had, in a few brutal words, swept aside the barriers of shyness and superiority that, as a Southerner, had cut me off from black singers. I saw that if I could be normally civil out of sight of the law, I could learn from them much that I wished to know. I was only a few miles from a goal I had long looked forward to, the home of, quote, Little Robert. In folk, as well as in fine art, there are especially gifted individuals who make great advances that preoccupy the less talented for generations afterward. Robert Johnson of Tunica County, Mississippi, was one of these exceptional men. A commercial recording team had found him on one of their annual Southern tours, had waxed a dozen songs, and published the records, but he hadn't been specially noticed among the scores of other blues singers who were recorded in the 20s and 30s, the roaring days of the race record business when millions of blues records were sold, almost all to working-class blacks. A few whites became aficionados. For years, Blind Willie Johnson's I Just Can't Keep From Crying and Memphis Minnie's Bumblebee Blues were the companions of my often lonely nights in the field. John Hammond, the patron of black jazz, put me on to Robert Johnson. He had discovered the unpublished masters of Johnson when he went to work for Columbia Records. Later on, one memorable evening in 1939, as I played through Columbia's stock of race records, I found the same batch of recordings. All alone that weekend in the New York office building, I played and replayed these masterworks. Recently, all of Johnson has been reissued on CD, and he has won international recognition. But in 1939, only a handful of us appreciated him. At that time, I was surveying all of the so-called race catalogs of the major record companies, and it was clear that Johnson's recordings stood out as the finest examples of the blues, along with those of great Blind Lemon Jefferson in the 20s. Blind Lemon's blues sold so well on black-oriented Paramount Records that he had his own lemon-colored label. At the peak of his success, a jealous woman put poison in his coffee. His voice still rings out in the scratchy records of the 20s like a rooster crowing before day, and his guitar, tuned in the neo-African scales of his tunes, is as subtle as moonlight on the Mississippi. And these recordings inspired rural blacks to sing the blues all over the South. My guess at the time was that Robert Johnson probably had been one of Lemon's brilliant disciples, since Johnson's style seemed so resemble Blind Lemon's. The high-pitched delivery, the brilliant counter-melodies between phrases, for example. At any rate, it was clear to me that Johnson was one of the 2 or 3 great originals of the blues. As remarkable a singer as he was a lyricist and arranger. Hammond wanted him for his epochal Carnegie Hall Spirituals to Swing concert in 1938, but the South had swallowed him up. No one I knew had a clue as to his whereabouts until William Brown said, "Now Robert Johnson's a boy you ought to hear too. Come from Tunica County. His mama lived down there. Seemed to me Miss Johnson's dwelling was a painted wooden shack, wobbling uncertainly on its cedar post supports, just higher than the sea of ripening cotton that rolled up to the gate. In the narrow dooryard, a withered rose bush was dying among the weeds, and a slick brown chinaberry tree held out clusters of decaying yellow berries to the sun. A skinny little black woman sat on the gallery watching us. She wore a black sack of a cotton dress, dusty from the fields. Her feet were bare, and her face looked out from under a fantastic cap of little gray pigtails, like a brown acorn in its cup. She said nothing as I opened the gate, regarding me with a calm gaze that seemed to come from far off. Yes, sir, I's Mary Johnson, and Robert, he's my baby son. But little Robert, he dead.